Yeah, I'll keep going. I'll intend to get to Aria of Sorrow at some point, because it is a really good game. It's a game I've really enjoyed. Like I did say earlier, though, I don't know any of the other Castlevanias as well as I know this. So a preemptive warning. There's probably going to be times when I get lost in the other Castlevania games. Probably the one I'd get the most lost in is Harmony of Dissonance, which is the second of the Game Boy Advance games. It gets a bad rap, and it is probably the weakest of the Castlevania games, of the Metroidvania games. But it's still a solid enough game. The biggest problem is it's in excellent company and it's only decent. Which, you know, you see a lot of people on the internet who will tear a game apart and call it awful because it's an example of a weak game in an excellent series. I don't want that back. An example of a weak game in an excellent series. And it's not entirely fair. Like, I know a bunch of people who call Twilight Princess one of the worst Zelda games and call it just a bad game in general, and it's not. Twilight Princess is an excellent game. Just because it's weaker, or they feel that it's weaker than, say, Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, or Ocarina of Time, it doesn't make it a bad game. Skyward Sword definitely is a weaker game. Is it a bad game? No. But you wouldn't know that the way some people talk about it. And the same is true of Harmony of Dissonance. But I'm probably going to get really lost in that game. There are 2 castles in that game. It's the same castle, just you go through a portal and you're in a different version of the castle, like the Dark World in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And some different pathways are open, and it can be really, really confusing to get around like that. Yeah, I can have trouble remembering. Oh, we got the Holy Water back. I can have trouble remembering stuff like that the best of times. Like the Resident Evil remake is a little troublesome for me because I will get the layout of the original mansion and the remake mansion confused. Because of how similar they are, but they have differences. So, you know, that's not great, and when I've not been through Harmony of Dissonance as many times as I've been through this, it's like, trying to keep them straight in my head is not the easiest thing. So Olrox, Count Olrox, I think he is referred to as, is a reference to the 1929, I think, movie Nosferatu, which is the first vampire movie. The production was actually sued by Bram Stoker's estate for copyright infringement over the Dracula, which is interesting. When these days you kind of think of Dracula as a public domain figure, but it happened. Almost every copy was destroyed, but piracy actually contributed to the surviving of the movie, and it's a very great example of early German cinema. So we take a seat here. In fact, actually, this is a good time. Let me pull the Fairy Familiar back out. Now if we just wait a moment and sit here before we start the boss fight. It's a very good example of early German cinema. Count Olrox is a reference to the titular Nosferatu of the movie, Count Orlok. And there have been several references to the movie over the years. Batman Returns, Christopher Walken's character Max Schreck is named after the actor who played Count Orlok, Max Schreck. The spelling is a little different, but it's the same thing. There we go. The fairy familiar sits on your shoulder, and eventually Alucard will fall asleep. If we give that a moment longer, we should see that happen. Yeah, it's interesting to consider these days with how rigidly film is protected, copyrighted these days, that so much early cinema is just gone. There are no copies of it left. None of it survived. Destroyed. Original sources destroyed. Poorly stored. And it's amazing to think just how much history is lost like that. Is he going to fall asleep? Give it a little bit more time. Because there's always influences in various people. People are influenced by various things. Every now and then you'll find a new or two upcoming director who will be influenced by a particular... There we go, he's fallen asleep. A particular classic film. And just, you could just think how many more people could be influenced by these films that have been lost. Also, when we move, the fairy doesn't expect it and falls off. But we will replace the fairy with the demon again and initiate this boss fight. Now, Olrox can be tricky. He can catch you in some really bad positions, mostly in his second form. First form isn't much of a threat, especially since we're using the Holy Rod, because as a vampire, Olrox is weak to the Holy element. And now we have his second form. This second form will like to spam fireballs, and it's very easy for him to trap you. That has a much larger vertical hitbox than you would expect, so trying to jump above it is not a good idea. Also, our little demon friend there is taking some pot shots. Since the fireballs are actually projectiles, we can block them with a shield. The Herald Shield we picked up in the catacombs. The underground caverns. Restores a heart for every hit we take. I think we're at max hearts now. Yeah. But it's a neat little effect. If you look, we actually just destroyed Olrox's arms. Those will grow back if the battle takes long enough. That's what I mean when I say he can spam fireballs. Try to get into the right position so he can't actually hit me. There we go. This is kind of neat. Reminds me a little bit of a Crocomire in Super Metroid, which is one of my favourite little twists in Super Metroid. Which is actually surprisingly graphic for a Nintendo game on the Super Nintendo, but... yeah, Nintendo made it. They can do what they want with their own system, I guess. With the Echo of Bat, we want to head back down to the catacombs, which we didn't go into. The teleporter we took out from the underground, we want to head back there. fastest way, I think, will be to go back the way we came. Yeah, I got it right. So the wolf, once you have the power of wolf, is the fastest way to get around. But you do want to watch your magic meter consumption with it. Because the more enemies you run through, the more magic it takes with every enemy hit. So you can run out before you even realise it in some rooms. Okay, this is the one we want to go for. We're going to do two things while we're down here. We are going to get the next progression item, and we are going to face an optional boss. I'm not going to be going for the best ending on this game, because more than anything, it's really tedious. There are 4 endings. The best ending requires you to get over, I think, 198% completion on the map. Which just requires, like, we take a look at the map, and there's various spaces in rooms we've been in that are missing. And it requires you just going over all of these empty spaces. And in a lot of cases, it's just really tedious to fill that all in. So we're not going to be going for the best ending, we're going to go for the second best ending. And so it's something that's probably going to happen a bunch as this channel goes on. I'm not going to be overly concerned with 100% completion. Because if you want to go for 100% yourself, that's all well and good. I don't begrudge you that. That I have not used Dark Metamorphosis yet, and I'm probably never gonna. But yeah, it's interesting. I generally prefer to play a game for as long as it's fun, and usually I stop having fun before I achieve 100%. For example, like I say, this game, it's a case of getting 100% map, 198% map completion, and it is really tedious. Future games will probably eventually get to the best endings in later Castlevania games don't require that. So, in the case of Dawn of Sorrow, because of how simple it is, this is what we need the Echo of Bat for, actually, because this room is filled with spikes. In the case of Dawn of Sorrow, all 3 endings are very simple to get. And it's a case of have a certain soul and use it during a certain boss fight to avoid the bad ending, and then to get the normal ending, have a certain item equipped at a certain time. And if you don't have that item equipped at that time, the ending will straight up tell you should have had this item equipped. And then you can just load from your last save and go into that cutscene again with the item equipped. So it's really simple to get all the endings there, so I'll probably just get all 3 endings. Just because how simple that is, and how quick it can be done. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I want to take this this channel yet. So this is the first Let's Play. Here's what we came for, the Spike Breaker armor, which is very literal in what it is used for. Considerable boost over the silver plate, which is nice. I'll show it off in a moment because we have just equipped it. yeah, mostly for the moment, it's a case of keep going and have some fun. I'm playing games for fun, and if anybody watching this has any kind of entertainment from watching it, then great, cool. And the same goes for the non-commentary version. If you enjoy watching the non-commentary version, cool, that's why it's there. So yeah, the spike breaker armor literally lets us break spikes. So now we go the other way, and that will take us to the optional boss I was talking about earlier. See, that's what I mean when I say you can burn through magic so quickly like that and not even realise it. What level are we at currently? 25. Oh, he took some damage, didn't he? Yeah, example of a game that I'm probably not going to get the best ending in. Crash Bandicoot 2 would be a good example. I'll probably play that at some point, and like, getting the gems just becomes such a frustrating thing after a certain point. It's like, I've done it, I don't really want to do it again. Because at that point I'm just not enjoying the game anymore. There's levels like Cold Hard Crash, which just aren't fun to do for the gems. So I'll go through that and I'll just get the standard ending. Which is fine, it's fine enough. Like Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3 have a similar thing with that. With the Lost World, which I'm not overly interested in. Have I beaten the game? Is there a credits roll? Cool. I'm okay with stopping there. But this is not the place for 100% playthroughs. In a lot of cases, this isn't the place for good playthroughs. It was like, yeah, I'm doing Symphony Night competently enough. You could find plenty of people who do it better than I do. Okay. There we go. Well, at least we got rid of those fires without being damaged by them. So the walk armor is an interesting piece of equipment. It increases the amount of defense it gives you, the more of the map you uncover. And if you're going for the best ending with the 198% plus map coverage, it will be your strongest defensive armor. Although there are certain other armors that do other things. This is the optional boss you came here for. This is Granfalloon. In later Castlevania games, it was renamed Legion, which makes sense. I'm not entirely sure what Granfalloon's supposed to be. Again, that channel John learned, which went over the origins of names and ideas for monsters and stuff. Pretty sure went over where the name Granfalloon came from, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Like I said, it's Annotated Symphony of the Night is a series well worth watching. Particularly if you're interested in the series and the folklore and everything, and just like learning more about ideas and mythology, and it's really cool. So I'm trying to pull off Soul Steal again, because with how big this thing is, every chunk of that is a separate hitbox. It's not so much about recovering health as it is getting rid of the bits that drop bodies. Nah, forget it, just start hitting that thing. Again, this isn't particularly a difficult boss. Like, the bodies are just doing one hit point's worth of damage. The issue is mostly it's just kind of irritating to actually hit the damn thing. And there's another boss we'll fight later on, Beelzebub. That does do a bunch of damage. And again, the trouble is hitting it. There we go. Now we just hit the centre enough times and the rest of the bodies will fall off. Watch out for its laser beams. There we go. We're all good. Like I say, not a difficult boss, but it's tricky to hit. There's a lot of bodies in here. Like this looks like a huge room. The background there seems to fade into the shadow, and the entire floor is like masses of skulls. Little known fact, James Cameron actually rented this room out from Dracula for the future scenes of Terminator 2. That bit where the Terminator just steps on a skull. And the bits where it's underwater and there's just piles of skulls taken from this game. That room in Dracula's castle, James Cameron rented it out. Apparently Dracula offers really good rates on filming inside the castle. You know, it's difficult to actually come up with that many skulls yourself. So, you know, Dracula understands. Okay, now that we took care of Granfalloon, which is mostly just to take care of Granfalloon, and we have the progression item that we went down there for, which was... There we go, the Ice Brand is stronger. Which was the Spikebreaker mail. There's a corridor in the Royal Chapel that we need to go to that I didn't go to earlier, which will allow us to continue the story. Actually, while I'm here, I'll show off a neat little thing. If we head through here... we end up under the librarian's chair. You may have noticed a little tunnel that leads beneath his chair. So that's a fun thing to do. And we actually got a life max up out of it, I wasn't expecting that. It can drop various different items, there are several items it can drop. I wasn't expecting the life max up, but that's a nice surprise. So now we just head to the Royal Chapel. The nearest route would be the Castle Keep. We head through the Castle Keep, which we could teleport to, or we could take the route through the Clock Tower. We'll teleport, we'll save the route through the Clock Tower for later. Because that is one of my favourite musical pieces in the game. So we'll just teleport to the castle keep for now. The teleport rooms all have a different figure on the top of them. The one I always remember is the castle keep is the lion head. And that's the only one I ever remember. I always forget the rest. It's not a very effective way to take out enemies, but I didn't want to turn back into Alucard for it. So I was being lazy. Okay, so it's not a long trip. But we can make it shorter by going into this save room to refill our magic.